Call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. Chris, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Detzel?
Here.
Mr. Engel?
Here.
Mr. Detzel?
Here.
Mr. Harlow?
Here.
Mr. Heather?
Here.
Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have approval of the minutes for
Yep.
February 17th.
Yes, we have approval of minutes for the special meeting on February 17, 2016. The treasurer and superintendent recommend the Board of Education approve the minutes as listed.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? Okay, Chris, call the roll. Motion passes 5-0.
We have one more approval of minutes. That's for the regular meeting on February 22nd, 2016. The treasurer and superintendent recommend the Board of Education approve the minutes as listed.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any additions? Chris? Motion passes 5-0. At this time, we'll move into legislative update. Michael?
Okay, thank you. Got a couple things, and I have to read them on my phone. Okay, so two bills have been introduced in the House recently that I think are of interest. One is House Bill 401 has been introduced by Representative Tom Brinkman. It will require more data reporting on curriculum, safety plans, and financial data for private, that is, chartered non-public schools. And then House Bill 410 has also been introduced, which would reform the truancy process and increase early intervention. It would also prevent expulsion of students whose sole offense is being truant. Now, what's really the point in that? What kind of punishment is it? You're not coming to school, and so we're going to, suspend you or expel you. So that's a couple of the state laws that are currently introduced, and then a couple things coming from the State Board of Education. One is that they met today, and they're meeting tomorrow. The topics that they're discussing are they're pushing back against efforts to weaken the charter school accountability laws, which were passed earlier, like last summer, and then they haven't taken full effect yet. And there's also concern about the poor scores, particularly the value-add scores, from districts who gave PARCC assessments solely online. So those are a couple topics that they're addressing at the state board. And then ODE itself, the department is looking for educators to serve on the ELA and Math Standards Revision Working Group. The deadline for that is, to be nominated for that is this Friday. There's a link on the department's website, and it's just basically a survey monkey form. So that's an opportunity for educators to weigh in on proposed standards revisions. So that's my report.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, Butler Tech report, Jim?
Yeah, just one thing. There was a group of 9 of us from Butler Tech, plus the superintendent, that went to Washington, D.C. for 4 days for the National Policy Seminar. And basically what that was they have the Perkins Funding Act up there for technical schools throughout the whole country. And they are putting in there's $1 billion that goes out to all the states and all the school districts for tech schools. So we went up there asking them to maybe if they could increase that for the state of Ohio. The state gets the 5th most amount of money in the country for tech schools. So we got to meet with Rob Portman. We got a breakfast meeting with him, Sherrod Brown, and Steve Shabbat. So we got into talk to the guys that are going to vote on it. So we made our case, but they all said at the end, well, there is a $17 trillion budget deficit. So who knows if they'll increase it or not? But it was a good experience up in Washington. So that was it.
Okay, now we're going to move into the principal's report.
I would like if you were going to introduce her. I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Stiles, principal of Colerain Middle, who will provide her update on the 2015-16 building goals.
Good evening. Evening.
Thank you.
Howdy.
I appreciate that. I'm going to present the map data that we have so far this year. There we go. At the start of this year, I sat down with Daryl and we created building goals that centered around maps with the design to improve student achievement with the hopes of our report card being higher than it was this previous year or the previous several years. And what we set together is we wanted to have a 15% increase in our MAP scores as far as how many students met their growth. Those numbers were really low last year, and we thought by the winter we want to have 15% of those students increase in who met and 20% by the end of the year for both reading and for math. And then these same goals applied to our subgroups, which were African American students, students with disabilities, and our economically disadvantaged students. Once we looked at that baseline data, our targets were set for each particular group, and those are in yellow. As you can see again in the fall, we looked at the data from last spring as well as the data from the fall to kind of set those targets. We looked at both of the pieces of information, set that in general as a 15% increase. It fluctuated a little bit based on the initial data, and those were the goals that we set to be midway through the year. And then the same thing applied for reading. What we noticed in the winter, which we were very happy to see, is once we had that 15% target, we exceeded that beyond what we thought we would be able to do. So we actually had to revise our results when, for example, in the 8th grade math, the fall scores were 44% of the kids had met their growth from the previous spring. So we set that target as a 59. So I'm looking in the top left corner, 59%. We wanted 59% of our students to be able to meet their growth score by their winter. And what a growth score meant was when we looked at the MAP data, they set those targets for us. So if I had scored a RIT score, which is just the general score that they look at, of a 215, MAP was predicting that I was going to grow anywhere between 2 and 3 points. So we wanted at least 59% of our students to get that growth score, knowing that we'd love to have all of our students do it, but we wanted to set goals that were attainable and then continue to progress through those goals. What we did find for the percentage of students in that top left corner is for our IEP students, our students with disabilities, is 80% of our 8th grade math students met their goal. So basically 4 out of 5 students that were identified as a student with disabilities met their goals. So they're growing when they're in the classroom. Same thing, 72% for our 7th grade students and 73%. And then everything in the green aligns with our African American students, with our economically disadvantaged students, as well as for all students, which is in the bottom right corner. So what we realized through this, also when we looked at our reading, we saw similar scores. So we had, for example, 24% of our students had met their growth from the spring of last year to the fall of this year. For our IEP, we wanted to increase that to 39. And for 7th grade, we saw 84%. So 84% of our students that were on an IEP in the fall, 84% of our students met their growth from fall to winter. And the same goes for the students that are in the African American, economically disadvantaged, and for all students. So what we were pleasantly surprised to see is that we exceeded every single goal that we had set since the beginning of the year. That's great. We were very excited about. But then what we also had to do is we had to look back at our goals and say, okay, if we're exceeding them by this much, yes, we're proud of our students, and yes, we're applauding our students, but we set the bar too low. And if we want to make sure that we're going from growth to achievement, we've got to then go back and revise our goals. And that's what we did in the spring. But before I get to that, we did have some additional data. We have what's called a conditional growth score, and that's how our school performs in comparison to other like data schools in the area. So for example, whatever our general RIT score was, if it was a 210 or a 215, we were compared against all of those schools that also took those MAP assessments. And when we scored in the winter, we were in the 99th percentile when we compared those scores to every single school that scored similar to us. So it's not like demographics, which is what we're used to comparing ourselves to. This is like scoring. So of the schools that had similar data, similar testing data, we outscored all of those schools. The only exception for that was we were in the 66th percentile for our African American subgroup for 6th grade math only. And the reason why that's important is when we adjusted our spring scores, we had to tweak that one a little bit because we want that population of students to also be in the 99th percentile. So we recognized that that was a little bit lower, so we wanted to beef up those scores and really focus in on that group of students so that those scores would mirror what everybody else's scores would be. So although we are showing significant growth in comparison to schools that began the year with similar data, we also have to have a focus on overall achievement. Because as you guys know with the school report card and the district report card, value added is a component of it, but it's not the only piece of the report card. So we have to look at not only growing our students, but getting them to a point where they're achieving at high levels as well. So then we look at our adjusted spring targets. And how we did this, if you look at all students for math, the winter average RIT score was a 217.5. And so that's when you looked at all students, and then we did the same thing with our subgroups. And what they showed, if you look in that top left corner, was an average growth of 5.8. So on average, our 6th grade students grew 5.8. Now when a student gets a score, if you go home and you look at your child's results, they're not going to have a growth of 5.8. They will have a growth of 5, or they will have a growth of 6. They will have a whole number growth. But when you average that, that's where the decimal comes in. So we looked at that average growth and we thought, okay, MAP might only predict students to grow 2 or 3 points. However, our students have demonstrated that they can grow more than that. So what we want them to do is to at least maintain the growth that they have already demonstrated. So when you talk to a teacher, that worries them a little bit. They say, well, MAP is only predicting and only saying that this child should go 2 to 3, maybe 4 points, but you're saying that we need to grow 5.8. Yes, that is true, but we need to do that for 2 reasons. Number one, we need to grow a lot more than the other students because our data is showing that we're not performing that high. So we need to set the standards higher and those growth targets higher so that we can get up to the level where I know our students can be and where our teachers know our students can be. So we are automatically going to set that higher. And number two, I'm not asking them to score anything more than what they've already demonstrated. They demonstrated that in the fall, 6th grade math students grew on average of 5.8. That's what they showed us. So why not say that they have to at least maintain that, if not do better? And where that helps is if a student increased their score by 10 points, I'm not only asking them to increase by 5.8, because the higher you go, the harder it is to increase that score. If that child only grew 4 points, well, then I'm asking them to improve that by growing 5.8 or growing 6 points. And again, I only selected the numbers that they already demonstrated. I presented this information to our building leadership team. They looked at the data. They took it back to their TVTs. They took it back to their departments. Everyone agreed. If this is what the students have already demonstrated, there's no reason we can't expect them to continue to do that or better. So we did the same thing that applied with the IEP. Our economically disadvantaged, and our African American students. So that's where all the specific numbers come in, the 6.2, the 6.6, 5.1, 5.2, 7.5, and 4.5. And then if you look at the national norms, our targets were set based on the average fall to winter growth for each subgroup, as I just explained. When you look at the national norms, 6th grade by the spring, they should be at a 225.3. They should be at a 228.6, and they should be at a 230.9. So as you can see, even with students maintaining that growth, we still have a lot of work to do. So while we were celebrating in the winter that they were the 99th percentile for their conditional growth, we still have to set that standard high because we've got to get them to try to be closer to that national norm. We also realize it's going to take more than just one calendar year to get us there. So this is where we're starting for now, knowing that down the road we need to get that to be closer to those national norms so that we can have higher success on our state report card. But we also have to take our students and meet them where they're at and say, this is where you are, this is the path we're going to take for you to get there. If you look at the target of 5.2 for 6th grade math for our population of our African American subgroup, the reason why that is highlighted in green was for the reason that I told you before. They were in the 66th percentile for their conditional growth. We want them to be in the 99th percentile when they take that test again in the spring. So as opposed to their growth score being the 3.2, which was what their average growth was, we kicked that up by 2 points so that we could try to get those students to be in the 99th percentile, similar to all of our other subgroups. So we recognize that we have a larger gap, with that sixth grade class, we want to make sure that they are performing at the same level as all of their peers, so we beefed up those scores for those students. Whoa, this kicks fast. And we did the same thing for our reading. Now, as far as instructional strategies, our teachers have one or two solid things that they are focusing on for this year. Their first thing is their district goal, and that's the tracking of student progress. And that's something that every teacher in the district is doing. That's something that our teachers are doing through their teacher-based teams, through their TBT meetings that they have on Mondays and Wednesdays, in which they're looking at data and saying, where is this child? What do we need to do? Where are their areas of weakness, and how can we get them there? They do that twice a week for 45 minutes. And I'll be honest, the teachers are doing it way more than that. There's not a time where I'm in their room, whether it's their Friday personal plan, before school, after school conferences, that they're not talking about what they can be doing for students. I could not ask any more of the teachers that we have at Coley Middle School. They've been fantastic. What they do specifically, they have looked at the MAP data. They've set new targets for their students based on what their previous data was. So whatever that strategic target is, if they were supposed to grow 5.8, they are applying that for their winter to spring information. They've grouped the kids into safe, bubble safe, intervention, and high intervention, and they've based those numbers on what MAP says is a high-performing score. So if they come within that national norm, they're considered safe. If they're coming within that national norm and passing that test based on previous data, they're considered our safe kid. If they're not, they're bubble safe if they're close, if we put them within 5 points of that. If they're within 10 points, they're in our intervention group. If it's 15 or more, they're in our high intervention group. So they grouped it based on that MAP data and compared it also to last year's state information. And we all realize that the test is changing, but we have to compare it to something, so this is our starting point, and we will revise it from year to year. Also, with our common assessments that we have within our building, teachers will regroup their students from Test A, that some teachers will refer to as the pre-test, to Test B, which some teachers refer to as the post-test. This is where we're seeing our biggest gain. This is why I believe that we are having the growth scores that we're having in MAP, is because of the collaboration that the teachers at Colerain Middle School have from Test A to Test B. They look at every individual child and they say, where are you? Where are your areas of weakness? They hone in on those areas of weakness, and then they give them either remediation or enrichment based on if they have areas of weakness or areas of strength. And what we have seen from that data is that the kids are growing significantly. They are being able to target those students and give them the appropriate remediation if needed, as well as the appropriate enrichment, and be able to apply that data so that they can extend their knowledge and extend their thinking. So we're meeting the needs of all students. Teachers in many of the TBT groups, if their schedule allows for it, will actually do cross-grouping, cross-regrouping, where they will say, this is a child that's on my team, but I'm going to have them learn with this other teacher, so that way we can even group students more appropriately based on the data that we have. And what we have found is that the students have benefited from this. This has actually been very motivational for the students, because those students that kind of are on the fine line of how hard do I want to try on the first test, knowing that I get a second test, they have now said, if I'm going to be in the project group and the enrichment group, I'm going to try as hard as I can on that first test to get them over. And the kids, that way, the kids that do struggle, they get more individualized attention directly one-on-one by that teacher. And not to say that the students in the remediation group aren't getting hands-on things, they are, but it's nice because they are able to get that individualized attention that they need, work with a special ed teacher if necessary, work with a tutor if necessary, so that way they can get their needs met. Activities are often tiered to meet the needs of the students of varying abilities, and both during regrouping as well as regular instruction. And then lastly, the professional development that the teachers have received. The teachers have participated in 3 teacher-led professional development sessions that have aligned with the building and the district goals. Our second goal, our district goal, was tracking student progress. Our second one was regrouping. One tool that we feel is very beneficial for the students is technology. And we've been very fortunate over the past couple years to get more technology in the middle schools, and if we're going to have that technology, we need to use that technology. So our teachers all have access to their Eno boards, as well as 6 Chromebooks in each classroom. Every teacher gets one, and they use it. And not only are they using their 6 Chromebooks, but they are using the other teachers' Chromebooks. So they will pull from all the other teachers if they want to do a class activity, so that way each child has their own access to a Chromebook. They have done things. They've utilized Google Classroom. They have learned how to use Google Forms. They've used Plickers. That is not a typo. That is actually clickers. It's paper clickers that they can use. It almost looks like a little QR code, and the teacher can use their smart device, and they hold up their answer, and they rotate it. So if it's A, they hold it up one way. If it's B, they flip it. If it's C, they flip it. If it's D, they flip it. I hold it up. The teacher just goes like this with their smart device. It scans, shoots the data up to the board, and they can see if their own individual answer was right, and then it charts the progress of the students as a class to see if they're right, and it creates a great discussion point for the students and for the teachers once they get that immediate data. So they've used Flickrs, they've used Lenspace, they've used Kahoot, Quizlet, TED-Ed, Moodle. Those are just a few things that the teachers have had the opportunity to learn about this year. The engagement in the classroom has been phenomenal. Lenspace specifically, they use Flickrs a lot to track the data as well as Kahoot. Lenspace has been a huge regrouping tool that we have used where students are able to move through the information and they select the things that they are weak in. So if they have struggled on the test overall, if there's 15 to 18 boxes, they probably have to complete all 15 to 18. If they only struggled on a few things, they can select the boxes in which they are weak, and the teachers provide them with that information. And then if they didn't struggle on anything, those last few boxes are always enrichment opportunities for the students, so that way they can excel and learn past what the targeted instruction was and enrich their knowledge on that information. Questions?
I have a couple.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for putting this presentation together, and I'm really glad to see how well the students are improving on this. So I do actually have a couple questions. Well, the first is a comment. The QR code app that you were discussing earlier, I saw a demonstration of that something like 10 years ago, and I'm really glad that it's making its way down to, into the schools. It was, very promising technology at the time, and it kind of reminded me of the Ask the Audience thing on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire when that was a show back then. How long does the map take to administer?
It is anywhere between a 45 and a 60-minute test.
Okay.
Most students can finish it in one class period,
Okay.
Providing that there's no technology issues, which now that it's our third year using MAP, there's very few technology issues. And now that everything has been updated within the buildings, students and teachers can move through it relatively quickly. Our students with disabilities do take up to 2 class periods to complete it, but most students are able to complete it in 1 class period, maybe a class and a half.
Okay, that's good, because there's a lot of concern about the amount of time we spend, our students spend, administering all these tests between this and the Park now Air and all the other assessments that they have. So it sounds like this one is not terribly time consuming.
No, it is not.
Anybody else?
Other questions?
You covered everything. That was excellent. Congratulations on the successes.
Thanks, Ms. Stiles.
Now we're going to go to reports from employee organizations. Do we have anybody from certificated and licensed employees? Report from classified. Do we have a report from any school-related organizations? Community comments, I have 4 here. So the first one is Jim Acton. Let's talk about ADA and the new buildings and issue 3.
As the president of the school board said, my name is Jim Acton. I'm a resident of Colerain Township for over 51 years. I've had 3 children and 8 grandchildren go through the Colerain system. And what you presented tonight is very encouraging, because I can remember years ago, back in the early days, teachers were doing the same thing, but it was with a hammer instead of always hearing boxes and everything that you got. I have been a supporter of Colerain Township, Northwest School District, all my 51 years. 3 of my kids my kids, I should say. They went on, two of them became teachers. One of them became a office manager, and the other one, I like the kid, I call her the grave digger. She works for Arlington Cemetery and is the semi-office manager out there. Keeps me informed on what's going on. Back in October 2015, I came before the board after meeting with the athletic directors at Colerain High School and also Northwest High School. And brought up the subject, and Mr. Bowling, number one, my son says to tell you hi again. I asked that question, and he says if the levy passes, we're going to be one of the top priority items on the list. Where do we stand today on that subject?
For the ADA and
The state-
stadiums at both, Mr. McCabe, I believe we bid out both for summer permanent improvement, and they're due to be done this summer.
This summer, okay. Will the gymnasiums also be done?
I'm not aware of it.
Well, the railings were never put up in the senior high school when my kids were going there and playing basketball, volleyball, and everything else. And I raised Cain with Bubba, as I call him. And he said, we'll get them up for the next game. They weren't up yet. So that could be,
I know they're put up at Northwest. I'm not sure, we'd have to check with the new AD there. They should have them. They should have come with the bleachers, would be my assumption, Chris. But for the football stadiums, both to make ADA compatible, adjustments will be made and will be finished this summer prior to the season starting for both schools for soccer and football.
okay, good, I appreciate that. So I will put summer here. We were told when the tax levy passed also that we'd have 3 new schools. Through the grapevine of Colerain Township, which you all probably know about, but I understand that there's 2 new locations that are being looked at. One being Lake Gloria, and the other Old Providence Hospital in that area. Is this information something that's out there?
Yeah, we have talked about this at basically every board meeting for the last 3 months. The Lake Gloria property has been taken off. It is not of something we can afford, so PRE will stay at its site. The Taylor site will stay. We are currently seeking the property for Struble Elementary to possibly be moved to Powell Crosley owned property, which is where the old Providence used to be. If we stay at Struble, as we've discussed in previous board meetings, they're closing John Rose, which we're aware of, and if we have to stay there, it can work. We've looked at exiting the back for buses, and we know that it costs $150,000 for a bridge to go out back to take buses out through an alternate exit route. So we are looking at the possibility of purchasing for a small fee or seeing what we can do with trading property with Powell Crosley for the Providence Hospital area. What this has brought to our attention is that the community is concerned, and we have 3 places that are concerned. What's going to happen to the property at Welch, what's going to happen to the property at Beavis, and what's going to happen to the property at Struble. We have a Struble parent informational meeting that will happen on the 15th. We tried to tie it into Election Day, hopefully to get a big crowd. If there's any concerns, there will be a half sheet of paper that goes home with every student tomorrow at Weigel and Struble, as we just finalized the date. And we will meet to find out any concerns and explain to the parents at each building, if they're interested, what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. I'll then tell the board I would bring that feedback back to them, and we could make a decision based on if the property is even available. We're in negotiations right now. We know the property's worth $45,000 per acre. We're not going to pay that. They know that. They came back with, just make us an offer. So we're in the negotiation process for that. So it may work out, it may not, but it is something we're looking at.
Okay, the Sisters of Mercy no longer own that property there, the old
It's all-
Providence Hospital?
Nah.
City owns it?
The part we're trying to purchase is in Colerain Township. It is part of our school district.
Okay, it's back where the
It's at the corner of...
greenhouse and all that.
Yeah,
Yes, the
closer to the
all that,
greenhouse.
yep. Yep.
Okay.
And I think, Todd, doesn't Mercy Health still own all of that property?
All that property through the trustees who run the Powell Crosley estate.
approach them, they offer it to the city for $1, so you guys.
We're trying.
Well, but the dollar thing, sir, was that there was $2 million to demolish the hospital, and so that was $1, but you take care of getting rid of the hospital or whatever.
It's gone now.
Yeah.
No, it's gone, but
All
that
except
dollar
the-
They
price.
paid for it, yeah.
So we're doing our best, and
Yeah.
hopefully.
All my doctors have moved out of that building, that and the cancer center. which
It's
is
empty, the
closed.
cancer
Check
center's
it.
empty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're up at Good Sam now, so I spent many hours there. The other question that came up, and I brought this up to one of the members of the Northwest School District last, I think it was December, January, somewhere along in there. But somebody brought it up to me again today. There was a email that went out to all those residents who were signed into the Northwest School District website about issue 3. One of them said there was a flyer also sent out. I don't have a copy of that flyer. I can't answer that question. I emailed Ms. Crowley and asked her to give me some information back. She emailed me back on particularly the email portion of it, who sent it out. And I said, there's no name on it, it's just came from the school board. Is that legal, number one? And if it is legal, can I, and I'm against issue 3 for many reasons, which I won't bring up tonight, but can I also use that same informational center?
I'm not aware of anything that went out from our school district, and nothing went out from our server.
The only thing
That
is,
will come through my office and permission for that, and we do not send anything out to, nothing to my knowledge either.
Okay, well, Paulina, I sent back what information I had, and like I say, I don't know where it came from.
Did it come from the township?
No,
Plain Township?
no, this was a school board.
And you're saying, sir, it was a email to support the issue 3? Because I never got anything, and we were all on the mailing list.
Let's put it this way. I did not read the email. I got word of it. I can't verify that the email was ever published or the flyer was ever given to the kids at the elementary school. I can't verify that.
Yeah,
I was just
not
told.
allowed, 1, and 2, it never got approved by Pauletta, and we're not aware of anything that went out, so unless somebody's playing games, it didn't come
Well,
out.
they could be playing games. You know, politicians, they play all kinds of games.
Okay.
That's all I have this evening. One other thing that I did want to
myself.
bring
the
up
elementary school's fine.
is,
That's lame.
I don't know how many of you get this
Play the
magazine,
games
but
with
the
you guys.
Cincy magazine is for business people, and it rates all the birds, all the schools throughout the area here, and with the improvement that's happening at Corrine Elementary School, which I hope goes, will go from number 37 up. And as far as the birds, rating of the birds in the Cincy magazine, Corrine Township isn't even there among the top 50, which I'm sad to say. Thank you, and I'll look this summer to see construction at the 2 high schools.
Great.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now Matt Teetsort wants to talk about the BYOD policy and the Shoemaker settlement. Schumacher.
Okay. All right, first off, I'd like to start off with the, on the BYOD policy. I'm for it in some form or of matter. It's
Tell everybody what that stands for.
it's a bring your own device policy, and it's something that you, be it your phone, tablet, iPad, iPod, something like that, is going to allow students at the high schools and I'm assuming middle schools also, they'll be able to use it under when the teachers permit them to, time to use those devices. It's something I brought up 2 years ago in 2014 because in my son, when he was going to Coleraine High School in 2013, 2012, contrary to the current policy, they were, permitting them, permitting the use at the time, and when they shouldn't have been. And then they started cracking down, and they haven't been permitted to use these devices. So I applaud the board in pursuing this policy. But having said that, I was looking at, is this a BYOD policy? Where did it come from? Is it something that other schools put together?
Chris put it together, so I'll let Chris address it. It's coming back this year.
It was developed by our technology department. We took a look at several other schools in the area that are using similar product or similar policy.
Okay. Because a couple questions I had is, it seems like pretty high expectations of the students. Some of the things, that seems unrealistic to me, that we're going to, permit the students to use them. And then we're going to expect them to, they're students that they're going to, like for instance, student will not use the device to text message, email, or electronically communicate with others, including other students, parents, guardians, friends, and family during the school day. I just personally think that's, an unrealistic expectation that, they're going to do that.
They're doing it now.
Exactly, right. And which leads me another thing where it comes down to students understand that the school reserves the right to collect and examine students' personal device if there is reason to believe that the student has engaged in any type of misconduct while using the device. Who's going to enforce that and examine the device if it were to come to that? And what types of things are going to cause suspicion for that person to
You're
require
asking
an
a question that
examination?
could have 1,000 different examples. School administrators will be responsible for running their schools they currently do now.
Okay.
Or confiscating funds as they currently do now, as
Okay.
they have done for the past 5 to 7 years.
Okay, so it's not going to be, it's going to be pretty much the way it is now.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not going to be like teachers are going to
Now,
request the
the
phone.
purpose is to enhance learning. I think Mrs. Stiles touched on a couple things.
Right.
There are tons of other programs where you can give immediate feedback. My concern is not so much, and our concern is not so much devices coming into school. Kids are going to say certain things on Facebook, they'll say certain things on Twitter. It gives you a way to hide behind your laptop or hide behind your iPad. They're still going to do mean things.
Right.
But the advantages of learning and the ability to do research on your personal devices and how it can take learning to a new level and the instant feedback we can get in our classrooms is what's going to make it advantageous for us.
Right.
So it's one of those things where, here we go again, we want to compare apples to apples, so the Masons and the Sycamores and the Indian Hills and the Lakotas can all allow it.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we?
Right.
We have just as good kids. Our kids can go to college and perform just as well.
Right.
We need to just
So
keep
this
up
is
with
going to
what's
empower
going on.
our students, we let them know there's a time and a place for things.
I'll be honest with you, my biggest concern with it is the economically disadvantaged kids. So
Right.
we're doing our best to move to a one-to-one initiative by the time the new school's open, so that's not an issue. Because some kids
But
can
we
right now bring a tablet, bring a laptop, bring a phone, and maybe an iPod with them that'll work on the internet. And they have 4, where Johnny, whose family just can't afford it, but we already have enough technologies in the school where we can supplant what
Which is what I was going to say. With all the upgrades we have for the
Sure.
ones that don't have their own BYODs, their own devices to bring, we have like the middle schools. You're going to have the Chromebooks for those students.
Our middle schools
Right.
already have 6 Chromebooks.
Right.
Chromebooks per classroom. They have laptop cards that contain 30 apiece. There's
The high schools have the labs that are available to those students.
and laptops also.
Right. So if anything, it's like the students being able to use their own devices is going to free up the labs for the students that don't.
Correct.
Okay, all right. And then my other question is on this Schumacher-Dugan settlement that's basically extending the warranty on, from what I could tell on the agenda, it was deficient pavement work that was initially done a few years back. And then a $20,000 donation to the Northwest Local School District Fund or Foundation of the Board's choice. What was the initial remedy that was sought in the lawsuit, and how much was spent on the attorney's fees and everything?
Yeah.
That was
the
that we
initial-
came back with a $20,000 settlement.
All right, so what occurred is we had folks who thought that when they bid the project knowing that they weren't going to do everything that was required on the bid. And Chris, step in anytime you want, but I think I got it down here. There was a certain product that had to be used. There was a certain amount of pavement that had to be removed. So they thought that when this lawsuit was brought before us, and the board voted on it back in July, was that we did not get what we bid out. So we have our experts, who right now the board has spent $13,000 on witnesses that we won't get back. The warranty that comes with any paving job in any school district is 1 year. So we have a warranty now that you see published there that values anywhere from $20,000 to $35,000 because it reseals, it restripes, it fixes any damage that could pop up between now and 2023. These projects were done in 2013, so the 10-year warranty would expire in 2023. It's for Struble Elementary, which will be demolished in 2 years. It's for Colerain Elementary, and it's for Montford Heights Elementary. So it is a very good warranty that other people have not gotten and will not receive. And then on top of that, to prove that they are working as hard as they can to satisfy the district and their needs, they made a $20,000 donation to our students. So the fees we have out now are the $13,000, plus we believe Finney's going to bill us for more. And then we have to look at the contract that was put in place on July and see what they qualify for with what the settlement is.
Okay. All right. I believe that's all I have for tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next is Angela Richter rescinding my resignation.
My name is Angela Richter, and I work for Northwest. I'm a resident in Northwest School District. My kids went to school here. My grandkids are now starting to go to school at the preschool here, and I've drove a bus for Northwest for many, many years. I recently have received custody of my granddaughter who has multiple disabilities, and we get her up at 5:30 in the morning so I can drive a bus. Sorry, I'm nervous. I was presented a job offer that I really wasn't looking for a job offer, but was approached and offered this job where I wouldn't have to start till 10 o'clock in the morning or noon on some days, and I wasn't going to be losing in different areas. So for my granddaughter's sake and for her benefit, I thought about taking the job, and I talked to my husband, and we talked about it and decided, okay, I would do it. So I had to go through a training process, so I wanted to start immediately to get through it because of the spring coming and this and that. So I put my resignation letter in last Monday, but then over the weekend found out that the job was not open to me. It was not what it said, like what was lined out was not accurate, so I cannot do that job. So now my resignation letter is up for approval tonight, and I came here asking to keep my job. I don't know. Any questions?
Procedurally, once a resignation is handed in, we accept them, and that has been our policy. Because somebody wants to rescind it, what they have to do is reapply for the position. I mean, we have to stay consistent. We can't pick and choose whose resignation we accept.
My only thing about that is I also was approached this afternoon by some other staff members, and I know within this past school year, or this school year here, I guess the beginning of it, there was another staff member in the transportation department that had given a resignation letter and rescinded, and he still continues in the position he was at.
When that happened, Dr. Kessling put in a new policy that allowed me to accept resignations. Since that policy has been put in place and I am accepting resignations, we have not done that for anyone. And our records show that.
Seems to me, though, assuming that your work history's been good and you've worked here, how many years did you work here?
I've lived in Colerain Township for 15 years, and I've worked here 13 out of 15.
Well, I know when I go by the transportation barn out there's always help wanted signs, so it would strike me that, if you reapplied, assuming that you left on good terms and then, that you took the high road, that strikes me that it would be logical we would want to hire somebody with 13 years experience. I don't know I haven't seen your personnel file, but I mean, the sign last time I went by there was still up.
Right, we have 5 open currently have 5 open routes, so with my route would be 6. But to be on my route and to be a contracted driver for numerous years and to go back and be a sub, then I'll be going through different routes and have to go through the whole process again instead of just staying on the route that I'm at.
Right, and
So
understand, this isn't personal towards you. We have had a problem over the past couple of years, and the biggest thing we get hit by transportation is you need to be the same on everything. So the minute we try to be the same and pass the policy where I can accept resignations, and we have been the same since that occurred, we can't pick and choose between good and bad drivers who may want their job back and didn't leave on good terms or bad terms, even though there was no problems when you did leave. But we've got to stay consistent, but it's not personal.
I guess I was just kind of confused today when I was trying to talk to Terry about, and I emailed Mr. Fisher about putting my resignation letter in, and then it hadn't been voted on yet, so I wasn't sure how that process worked versus putting it in, being accepted, but it's not been voted and passed through.
Yes, Mr. Bowling is able to accept resignations and hiring. That is why we are able to hire people and have them working before it's board approved. There is a resolution in the board for hiring, and most recently we added resignations as well, because there's often a crunch time in getting people employed back with us to fill positions prior to board meetings. So he is able to accept resignations as well as hiring. So when you submitted your letter of resignation, it was immediately processed. Our board agenda is uploaded on Wednesday afternoon. So last Wednesday, your resignation was uploaded, and that is Mr. Bowling's acceptance of the resignation. So
I
that's,
just wasn't sure it worked.
yeah, so we can employ people and accept resignations prior to board approval because the board has given our superintendent that right.
Okay.
So
Just
that's
wasn't
how that
sure it
works.
worked. And so then I would need to go ahead and reapply for employment then?
Yes, you would.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our last is Ryan Manring, defective district paving work.
Good evening. Kind of piggybacking on Matt and Todd's discussion here, I've read the fraud lawsuit, which is available from the Hamilton County Clerk of Courts. I believe while the settlement acknowledges that Schumacher intentionally did not follow job specifications, it is unfair to other contractors who bid this work responsibly and had enough money in their bid to complete the work as designed. There's no real competitive bid process when specifications are not enforced, and that is bad for the schools, where my wife and I went and which our children attend. Who was watching out for the district during these projects? Did the architect get paid to monitor the projects? And did they sign off on this work? Does this settle the portion of the fraud lawsuit against SHP, or does this only affect the contractor? You, the board, are supposed to be watching out for the schools and facilities. All the repairs that Schumacher says they will have made, that they will make, should not even be necessary had the pavement been rebuilt correctly to specification in the first place. If this was your personal money and you had paid for a new driveway at your home in 2013 and it started falling apart when it was a few months old and you found out that it was because the plans weren't followed, would you accept a warranty and inspection every year, or would you want your money back so you could hire a different contractor? As the district heads into an $80 million building program, it seems that the clear message to contractors is do whatever you want. Because based on the settlement, you will get away with it. The agreement doesn't even have a due date for the contractor to pay the $20,000 settlement. What makes you think you ever get your check? I realize that it's probably hard to hear and may not be accepting, but and I'm sure we have the votes on it. That's why it's been brought up. So maybe it's already a done deal. But I appreciate the opportunity to address the board, and I hope we consider this going forward.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, Todd.
Our first item is 11.1, certificated licensed personnel. There is 1 acceptance of tutor procedural resignation and 2 acceptance of extra duty resignation. Superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the certificated licensed personnel retirements and resignations as listed.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? Chris? Motion passes 5-0.
Next is a classified personnel item. You will find 4 acceptance of tutor procedural resignations, 8 acceptance of classified substitute procedural resignations. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the classified retirements and resignations as listed.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions? Chris? Motion passes 5-0.
The next item is a fiscal item, 13.1 vendor contracts. You will find 3 vendor contracts as listed. Superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education authorize the vendor contracts as listed.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for the vendor contracts. Any questions or comments?
Yes, Todd, I saw one of these contracts is with Beckfield College in the amount of $0. Are they donating something, or how is that?
It's for nurses to come in and learn their continuing education with students.
Okay, okay.
It's $0. They're not paying us, we're not paying them. It's to give them experience.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a win-win.
Anything else? Chris?
The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the vendor contracts as listed.
I think we already had a motion.
Yeah.
so-
I just want to make sure.
That's okay.
So moved.
No, we already had it.
Yeah,
We just vote.
Yeah. Sorry for throwing everyone off.
Motion passes 5-0.
Next is a general business item. It is a settlement for recovery for defective district paving work. This is a settlement of a lawsuit that the Northwest Local Schools had against Schumacher Dugan and SHP for paving work. This settlement gives the district a 10-year warranty of a value of $20,000 to $35,000. The normal length of a paving job is a 1-year warranty. Our business director has walked each lot with the paving expert and documented any issues with the current paving jobs at Struble, Corino, and Mei-Chi, and currently there are none. Approval of this settlement will effectively end the lawsuit with Schumacher Dugan and SHP, cover legal expenses that will go from anywhere to $13,000 to $20,000 when we add them up, and give the district a warranty on the paving work that it does not have for any other of our lots. They are also donating $20,000, and there is a due date of March 21st for this to be received. Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the settlement for recovery for defective district paving work and donation to students as listed.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments?
Pam, I'd like to comment on it. You bring up some very valid points, and when we had the discussion a year ago on the architects and changing, I said, Mr. Strong will remember, elections have consequences. And it's very clear that, in my opinion, I'm going to vote to settle this because elections have consequences. Is it ideal? No, but it's sort of take what we've got and run with it because I'm not a builder, I'm not a contractor, I'm not a paving guy. It's better than nothing, and we've got 3 new buildings going up. I want to focus on these positives and not be drug into this nasty, prolonged litigation that could very well go on for another year or longer, and then ultimately maybe get nothing and then incur many more expenses. So I want you to know that it's with some reluctance, but again, elections have consequences.
I have a fair amount of reluctance as well. However, in a lot of ways, this kind of, pushback and accountability that we've had here is not something that most vendors, and a lot of times when there's issues, we're kind of at a disadvantage once you sign a contract. And we're educators. We're here to educate kids, and it just seems like the fact that we investigated this and pursued it is something of a wake-up call to not just to Schumacher, but to our other vendors as well. This is not something you don't usually get a lot of pushback on when there's cracks in the pavement after a year or other projects. So I think people know that we're watching out. Our culture of high expectations and holding people accountable to kinds of reforms that Todd brought to Northwest High School many years ago are extend to our vendors as well.
Did we have a motion?
I just have another comment. To follow what Chris and Michael said, I don't have any reluctance at all because I'm confident with Todd and Chris that they've done their due diligence and have made sure that the district is whole on this. And I do not have a problem with that. We hire these guys to do our day-to-day operations. And I think they've done a good job at it, and we're moving on.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Chris? Did we have a motion? We had a
Yeah,
motion.
you guys-
Yeah. Chris, could you call the? Okay. Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
Next is a general business item. We're bringing back Bring Your Own Device BYOD policy. Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the BYOD Bring Your Own Device policy as listed.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions? Chris? Motion passes 5-0.
All right, the next is lengthy, so I apologize, but there are some things we need to recognize. Certificated licensed personnel items. We have 4 approvals of certified staff leave of absence, 3 approvals of tutor change in status, 1 approval of Title I tutor, 1 approval of preschool screening, 8 approvals of preschool screenings, 6 approval of spring credit recovery after-school tutors, 18 approvals of after-school Title I tutors, and 2 approvals of the district after-school tutors. I would like Daryl Yater to take some time. He met with Susan Smith and Chrislyn Turner in changing their approach to credit recovery options for our juniors and seniors who need to make up credits to meet graduation requirements. Daryl, could you go over the approval of these spring credit recovery after-school tutors?
One of the things we did was, instead of looking at summer school, the high schools are now offering credit on semesters instead of yearly credit. So in order to help students remediate and make up credit in real time, what we've done is we've moved to a spring school and a fall school where students who fail first semester courses at Corrigan High School and Northwest High School have the opportunity to make up those courses in the second semester. It does 2 things for us. It real-time remediates the students' credit as they go through the second half of the year so that while they're in the second half of Algebra 1, they're making up the first half of Algebra 1, so they're not credit deficient when they finish that year. The other thing it does is a lot of our high school courses now have state end-of-course exams associated with them, so it allows students to get remediation on the content they didn't already understand the first half of the year before they take that assessment at the midway point through the second half of the year. So it's that real-time remediation, and it allows them to make up that half credit before summer. So we're going to be offering that now for the courses in the fall that they missed, and then in the fall, students who failed courses in the spring will be able to make up that half credit in the fall.
I think one of the other great things they looked at is kids, unless they're participating in athletics, aren't in a hurry to get home. So they're basically already there. We've got them at school. Let's keep them at school. Let's extend their day, extend their education. So I applaud Daryl on
And
his
we're
change.
also offering transportation for that. So we're trying to make it as easy as we can so that students have the incentive to stay there, get the credit, and like I said, they don't end up becoming credit deficient as they move through high school. They can make it up in real time.
I would think that's really going to make a difference because you get so far behind, you give up.
Yeah.
And this way, you know, for whatever reason, there's a lot of different reasons that they could have a bad semester, personal things at home, and boom, get right back on track. So this is a great idea.
Since we're also talking about approving Title I tutors, I'd like to publicly recognize Jenny Blust in front of the board for all of her hard work on our latest state review of our Title I programs and funds. The evaluation process by the state is very comprehensive and time-consuming. They evaluate our use of funds legally and academically. This not only covers our schools, but also parochial schools, and the evaluation went very well for our district. So I'd like to give a huge thank you to Jenny for all of her hard work. and along with Stephanie and Jack in the HQT responsibilities. And then Jenny had some assistance running some errands from Brenda Miller, Terry Sutton, and Daryl Yater. So a big thank you to Jenny. Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the certificated and licensed personnel items as listed.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments? Okay, Chris? Motion passes 5-0.
The next item is a classified personnel item. It is 1 approval of an initial appointment. It is 8 approval of classified substitutes to be paid at various rates. 3 approval of classified leave of absence. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the classified personnel items as listed.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments on the classified personnel items? Chris? Motion passes 5-0.
The next item is also a classified personnel item. It is the revised job descriptions that we've been doing continuously. You will find updating of job descriptions with custodian and current maintenance positions, and as we have done over the last several months. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the revised job descriptions as listed.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Questions or comments?
Yes, just a generic question. I'm sure the answer varies. When is the last time, like how long has it been since some of these job descriptions were updated? Or does it vary?
I think I was in high school.
Many of them go back to 1999, some of them are 2000, some of them were updated in 2006, so it just really depends on, well, it just depends.
Well, it just sounds-
So you
it
go
sounds like
anywhere
it's long
from
overdue.
12 to 25 years for some of them.
Yeah. Many of them still have like VCRs and typewriters on them as things that need to be used for the completion of the job. So, very much needed.
42 years old and I never typed a single paper on a manual typewriter.
You haven't?
You must have great handwriting.
No, they had electric typewriters even by the time I was in school.
Okay, we had a motion. Did we have a motion? Okay. Chris, call for the vote. Motion passes 5-0.
The next is a curriculum and instruction item. It is an extended field trip request. The Colerain High School RISE program is requesting permission to take 25 students to the State House in Columbus, Ohio from Thursday, April 14th to Saturday, April 16th, 2016 to participate in the YMCA Youth in Government Assembly. Students are responsible to make up missed work from their participation in the field trip. Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the extended field trip as listed.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Could we possibly get them in here to a meeting to let us know, tell us about their experiences?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think when you have 5 elected officials up here, it's great to see the students participating in the youth in government and making a trip to the State House.
Chris, call for the vote. Motion passes 5-0.
The next is a miscellaneous action item. It is a resolution to support Colerain Township Issue 3. A resolution to support Colerain Township Issue 3 for the upcoming election by the Board of Education of the Northwest Local School District. Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the resolution to support Colerain Township Issue 3 for the upcoming levy as listed.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, Pam, I'm the only board member up here that doesn't live in Colerain Township. I live in Greene, so I'm uncomfortable telling the folks in Colerain to vote for something that's not going to affect me. You know how I feel about taxes. At the same time, I've heard from a lot of senior citizens. My mom lives in Colerain. You know, the senior center is not half of what it used to be. So I don't know if it's a good thing or not. But at this point, so if you see an abstention up there, you understand I live in Greene, doesn't affect me. I don't think I should be recommending to you what, and the people of Colerain, what they should do. So I wanted to explain that in advance.
All right, Chris, call for the vote. Motion passes 4-0, well, 1 abstention.
All right, we are down to section 15.1. We have a school and district report card results 2014-2015. Daryl Yater and Brenda Miller will present the 2014-15 school and district report card data.
We need a little humor to start, so.
She's my humor.
It's only 8:11, so you're getting us about 45 minutes earlier than the last two times.
There we
spoke
go.
about data.
Yes.
Data is always the ending. So we're going to talk about the report card. The first thing we want to focus on is where we are, and Libby did a nice job kind of setting us up for this presentation. This is what our district report card looks like, and it doesn't look great. And Todd has acknowledged that and said that publicly. And one of the things that Brenda and I want to do is we want to kind of dive in behind the report card, because although as a district it doesn't look great, there are pockets of success that are hidden behind there that we want to spotlight, capitalize on, and replicate throughout the district. So when we look behind the report card, there are some celebrations at the secondary level. So when we look at this, on the far left, Colerain High School, last year Colerain High School had a C in both their 4 and their 5-year graduation rate. This year, Colerain High School has moved to a B in their 5-year graduation rate. So they are making strides, and both high schools have addressed graduation rate this year in their action plans, where they are strategically trying to target and work with the seniors to make sure that as many of them as possible are working toward their graduation so they can meet that 4-year rate. One of the things that is a huge success this year has been what Libby talked about with value added and growth, and how students are making progress, and you have to make progress before you make achievement, and that happens to be White Oak Middle School. White Oak Middle School, last year, if you looked at their report card, their overall progress, which is students making a year's worth of growth within that year, they were an F overall. This year, their overall progress report is an A. They went from F to A, which is huge. When you break that overall down and start looking at subgroups, the gifted stayed a C. That's a hard group to keep moving because they're already at the top. So maintaining that was kind of solid for them, but they're still working on strategies on how to try to move that up. When you look at the lowest 20% and the students who need a lot of intervention, last year they were at a D. This year they're a B. Huge improvement with trying to help some of the students who really need that intervention. And then with their students with disabilities, last year the growth of their students with a disability was rated by the state as a D. This year, based on last year's test results, they're a B. They made huge improvements with that growth, which continued growth is going to equal achievement. And so that was great for White Oak, and we're excited to see what the growth from Colerain Middle, based on what Libby said tonight, is going to look like when this report card comes out for the current year. And then the last thing we wanted to spotlight, this doesn't show up on the actual report card, but when you look at some of the behind the scenes, even one level below what I'm showing you here for White Oak, where it's this building level grade. If you look below that building level grade, it's broken down by grade level and content area. So if you look at Pleasant Run Middle School, in their area of math, 7th grade math grew at a rate last year of 1.9. If the state gave grades for grade levels and not for buildings, that would have been a B for 7th grade math. And for 8th grade math, that was a 2.2, that would have been an A. So digging down deeper, there are pockets of success, and like I said, our goal is to identify those pockets of success and then replicate those district-wide, so our building report cards don't just improve, but our district report card improves.
I'd like to highlight just a couple of successes at the elementary level. Again, we're not pleased with how our overall report card for the 14-15 school year looks, but there are pockets of success. Earlier I presented to you the K-3 literacy improvement that we made. That was a score of an F for the 13-14 school year, and for this past school year we did get a score of a C. I think that one of the interesting things here is that's the highest grade that was given in our area for surrounding districts that had a significant number of students off track that needed to be moved to on track. Some of the school districts that typically score very well and get A's on the report card didn't have enough students to even get a letter grade for this particular measure who are off track. So we're not the only district that received a C, but nobody in our area had a B or an A. So I think that that's a celebration. Obviously, we want to see that even better for this school year. The other two areas I've chosen to highlight for elementary both relate to progress and growth. Like Daryl said, a grade of a C means that students, either overall or in that subgroup, made a year's growth in a year's time. That's what we want to see for students who are already on track. For students who are not on track, we definitely want to see more than a year's growth so that we're closing those gaps. We did have 3 schools that received a grade of C for the gifted population. This is the gifted students that are identified, not necessarily students served. In our elementary schools, we had grades of C at Colerain Elementary School, Montford Heights Elementary School, and Pleasant Run Elementary School. We also would like to highlight the fact that we had 2 schools that received solid grades for those students scoring in the lowest 20% in the state. And Montford Heights there received a B, meaning that they are beginning to close the gap for those students. Pleasant Run Elementary scored a C. So again, not pleased with the overall, but definitely we want to look to those schools who had some success so that we can build on it and replicate it for the future. If you're like me, that data we've been talking about is 14-15 data. We're more than halfway through 15-16. So I'm imagining you're wanting to know, how are we doing? Are we doing better? Are we going to score better this year? In a previous presentation to you, I talked about the correlation that we see between the MAP assessments and the state, Ohio's high stakes assessments. We have a good degree of confidence that the MAP assessments do project how we will perform on the state assessments, even though we know that those assessments are changing. We have lots of indication that we do know how students need to perform in order to be successful there. The next 2 charts, this first one is for reading, the next one is for math. They show you what the average or typical growth across the country is for students at each grade level from fall to winter. So up where you see kindergarten, this is reading. Typically, kindergartners increase 10.3 RIT points from fall to winter on the MAP assessments. As you look across, or you look down the kindergarten for our buildings, you see that not very many of them have green boxes, which means not very many of them are making even that average growth. That's very concerning to us. We see that pattern in math as well as reading, and we're already deeply into conversation about how to provide more intentional and targeted support for our students so that we can see improvement in the primary grades. On the flip side, we're seeing huge successes, as Libby talked about earlier, with our middle schools, as well as with our buildings that have 4th and 5th grade. In fact, if you look at the numbers for our middle schools, in many cases, they've already made more growth than they're expected to make from fall to spring. So they have made a year's growth from fall to winter already. And as Libby said, they're setting high goals, realistic but high goals, so that we can definitely continue to close those gaps. So I think that we see some indications that we are definitely performing better in terms of the growth that we're making this year, particularly at our 4th through 8th grade. And we have plans in place. We're going to be doing some things differently to target reading in particular for our K1 and 2 students next year. So that's our reading data, and there's our math data. You see the same pattern. We're committed to continuing to monitor student achievement and growth across the district and to providing you with updates, and we hope that we'll have the opportunity to continue to do that in the future. Thank you.
I think I want to add I've written a letter to the editor. I think when I talk about this at board meetings and I write articles to letter to the editor, I don't think anybody reads them, so I'll talk about it again here, but I'll be glad to talk to anyone over the phone. The test that was given last year, if you look at Senator Peggy Lehner and some others, was absolutely useless. Kids got timed out on tests. They didn't get to finish tests. We spent 3 months testing last year, which was absolutely ridiculous. That test is the park. The park decided that that test was not efficient. They got rid of it. They've been removed. It's replaced with the air. We will start testing for that, and it will not take 3 months to complete. We'll look at a month total. Our map testing, just as a FYI for you guys, because Libby talked about it and some others, we'll start, I believe, Brenda said April 11th, and then go through about May 11th. So we'll finish up. It's 45 minutes of a kid's time, maybe 2 times of that. But the key here is the data that was presented in this report card, I don't care what it says, it's still not acceptable. But I think you could see all the green up there that we're making changes this year. And with new leadership and 3 buildings, leadership does matter. And we've got teachers who are going above and beyond what they're supposed to do. They're working smarter instead of harder. They're using the data. We're trying to do the best we can at our TBTs. It's very difficult for a new teacher to come out of college or just to get into teaching overall and understand things in year 1. And that's why I've talked to you repeatedly is we're going to do as much as we can to retain good teachers so we're not hiring 90 to 95 a year. And we're not just training them to go to other districts. So we're moving in that direction. But the results that you see up the last 2 slides are what's important to me because like Brenda says, they've worked hard and we're starting to see the growth that we wanted to see.
I just have a couple comments. First of all, it was a very good presentation, and it was difficult to work with this data. I'm well aware. One of the things, the gap closing AMO measure, where it looks really bad for us, except for our high schools. Nearly every district in the state received an F on that. They really have to recalibrate that. They look at it as a, how much of the gap are you closing in 1 year? And if you only close half the gap, that's 50%, that's an F. And we're at 33.7, which is still pretty good for a year. Nearly every district in the state of Ohio got an F on that measure. You could probably count on your hands the number of districts that didn't. There's 612 school districts in the state of Ohio. And then, the K-3 literacy, which is just so important. If you're not on track by the end of 3rd grade, you're behind pretty much your whole life. It's important to note that those, I want to emphasize, and you mentioned it, but those are the students that are being graded here are the students that are not on track, and it's how well are we doing getting on track. It's not, so there's like no low-hanging fruit in there. The kids that showed up ready to read, in that number. So these are hard numbers to make, and it's not like grades in college where pretty much everybody that shows up gets an A or B. It's hard work. The distribution of grades from the state of Ohio they're a very hard grader. They give a lot of C's and D's and F's, and so this is a work in progress.
Anyone else? Okay, at this time we have community comments. If you have any questions that about anything that we talked about during the meeting, now's the time you can ask. Yep.
I just had a quick question. Since the board voted to support issue 3, is the school board allowed to do that?
It's just a resolution. It's the same thing that the Colerain Township did for our school levy.
Okay.
They passed the same resolution supporting our bond issue.
All right. That's the only question I had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, you don't have to.
I was just curious if the $20,000 settlement money has been earmarked already, or if that's I would resolve that the 3 schools affected split it equally, divide it by 3, and that they can make use of that funds for additional facilities or improvements at the schools that were affected.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, now we'll move to board members' comments. Chris?
Pam, I just just real quick on the testing, and Todd, your point is well taken on the insanity of, these extensive tests. I'm just trying to remember back when I went to Mofford Heights, and Mark and other folks out there who can remember those days. I think we tested one day. And this continuing insanity and these report cards that, I don't care if you're an actuarial or a CPA, you probably can't figure it out. So, Michael, you're the man with the Columbus connections.
Yeah.
Fix it. But it is really gotten to the point of absurdity, and that's just my comment.
Oh, it is being fixed. It's a huge discussion up there. Some of it, it seems like it comes from Columbus, but a lot of it also comes from Washington, D.C. With No Child Left Behind, and then the No Child Left Behind waivers, because the original No Child Left Behind that was passed in 2001 had this goal that at the time seemed admirable, but which was that 100% of students across the board would be proficient by about 2014. And back in 2001, that probably sounded like an admirable, and maybe we'll get close, and and then when the clock turned, or started turning, and we realized that was kind of a pipe dream, the state started asking the U.S. Department of Education for waivers. And they pushed back and said, yes, we will be glad to give you waivers as long as you do some of these things. And part of it, although we were already testing, was some of the things that are now in the report card which we have to be tested for, went into that, as well as, although Ohio was moving in this direction anyway, teacher evaluations and principal evaluations and a lot of other things, even if we wanted to get rid of, or actually forced on us in some way, shape, or form by Washington. So but we do have an opportunity to fix some of that in our state plans under the new ESSA that was passed, Every Student Succeeds Act, that was passed in December. And it was passed by both houses of Congress and signed by the president. Now the ironic part of that is that by the time that actually takes full effect, it will be 2017, and we will have a new president. So we will have a new education department, even if the Democrats maintain the White House. There's a lot of difference in education policy between the current occupants and the two that are on that side that are trying to succeed him. And and if somehow I don't like to really comment much on politics here, but somehow Donald Trump were to be elected president, then nobody has any idea what the U.S. Department of Education would be thinking about at that point.
Bob?
Yeah, I found it amusing that when I came home from work the other day, I got the 50-page booklet on how to figure all the encrypting in the test scores. So, yeah, as I read through that, it'll be fun to go home and now compare the actual data to what they were saying in there. So, we'll see how that goes.
Jim?
I just kind of want to echo what Chris and Michael said about the testing is ridiculous. And, like Michael said, a lot of this comes from Washington, D.C., and just being up there for 4 days, it is just, there's so much red tape about everything and anything you want to get done. It's a wonder how anything gets done. It is so ridiculous. Other than that, that's about all that. I just want to say there is still tickets available for Paul Raines Monte Carlo on Friday night. So see Mark Strong, call him up, boosters, go to that and have a good time. When it's at Receptions in Fairfield. Okay.
And I know, I think I could probably speak for everyone in here. Our thoughts certainly were with the community in Madison. As I sat in the office and had the TV on, and when all of a sudden the show was interrupted that I had on in the background, from then I didn't get anything done because I was just glued to the TV. Because you see these things happen all over the country, but this is one that it's in our backyard. Madison belongs to Butler Tech, so we have connections with, we know people from there. I know the president of the board there, and all this is, just going through your mind. But the one thing I kept hearing over and over again, even as, the parents still weren't able to get to the kids and so on and so forth, was how well the school was communicating. And I think that really made a difference. The fact when we talk about technology and Facebook and Twitter and all of this. And yes, we're always going to have kids that are going to be texting and doing things they're not supposed to do. But the fact that they could get that out on Facebook right away, that first of all, those parents lined up along the street, they knew, kids had been shot, but they were able to put it out on Facebook, the district, that the parents that were affected already knew. So as a parent, I'm thinking you could, even though you're worried, obviously, for other kids, you could kind of breathe a sigh of relief that you knew, your child in that school was okay. I just want everyone to know, I know Pauletta makes a report at least once a year, but how much all the school districts around here really work together, and with the township and with the police department, the fire department, and we work on these drills. And that's the other thing they kept talking about, and even afterwards when they were interviewing the kids, is how many drills they had, and they knew what to do. They knew, to get down and close the door and so on and so forth. So I'm certainly glad that nobody died in that situation, but certainly my heart goes out for all of them, and even, the parents of the boy that did this, because, everybody has to live with that, and it's going to be a long time for that community to, if they ever can get over it. But just wanted to reassure everyone that at this district, as well as them, we take this serious, and we make sure the kids understand and our staff understands, and that's why we have these drills. And it's, unfortunately, in today's world, this is a reality that this can happen at any time, at any school, in any district. So our thoughts are with them. And with that, wow, 8:25, this is even before you two usually even report. I'd like to take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other comments?
Do you have to advance it?
Chris, whoops. Okay, Chris, can you call the roll?
Guess she doesn't want us to leave. There we go.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.